Witajcie, witajcie. Mam nadzieję, że udało się coś zjeść, odpocząć chwileczkę, wypić kawkę, herbatkę i jesteście gotowi na drugą część naszej konferencji. Drugą część rozpoczyna Lucy Tomaka, która jest nauczycielką, trenerką, twórczynią materiałów do nauki online, a jej największym konikiem jest wymowa. E, I uczenie tego, czego często w szkołach się nie uczy. Praca nad wymową to jest coś, co Lucy pasjonuje absolutnie i też myślę, że tą pasją będzie potrafiła Was dzisiaj zarazić. Lucy też prowadzi konto na Instagramie, które się nazywa Anglojęzycznie. I uwaga, to konto, ten profil ma już 121 000 obserwatorów. I tak sobie myślę, że po dzisiejszej sesji jeszcze kilku, co najmniej kilkudziesięciu nowych obserwatorów przybędzie.
Zapraszam serdecznie.
Tak. Lucy, witamy Cię bardzo, bardzo serdecznie. Oddaję Ci tutaj naszą scenę twistową, a Was zapraszam do aktywnego udziału.
Bardzo dziękuję, Ela. Bardzo dziękuję za miłą zapowiedź i dziękuję wszystkim, że zdecydowaliście się dołączyć do tej sesji. Ta sesja będzie po angielsku, dlatego że jest mi łatwiej ogólnie tłumaczyć rzeczy związane z wymową po angielsku niż po polsku, dlatego że ja głównie uczyłam się wymowy po angielsku, chociaż studiowałam też w Polsce przez 2 lata i tam miałam też na studiach fonetykę. Także zacznijmy. Ja tutaj właśnie, czekałam na prezentację. I just want to say hello to everyone. Hello, thank you so much for being here with me today. And I'm really glad I could be here today as well because I absolutely love teaching pronunciation. And I'm glad that teachers want to learn how to teach pronunciation and perhaps improve their own pronunciation as well. So, yes, my name's Lucy and I'm a trainer of British English pronunciation. And today we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about mistakes. We're going to talk about pronunciation mistakes Polish speakers make and how we as teachers can help them. So, first of all, we need to talk about those mistakes. We need to decide whether all mistakes are equally important. And probably as teachers, you already know that all mistakes aren't equally important, are they? Whether they're grammar mistakes or pronunciation mistakes or vocab mistakes, they're not all equally important. So we have to sort of discover which errors are the most significant so we can correct them and we can help students understand those mistakes and how they impact the communication. Because first of all, we need to talk about a little bit about pronunciation and accent, because sometimes people confuse those two. I rarely talk about teaching accents, right? I don't teach a particular accent, I teach pronunciation. I believe that learning pronunciation isn't about having a perfect accent. It's about intelligibility, so being understood and communicating with other people, because that's the ultimate goal of learning a language or speaking a language. So let's talk about 3 categories of mistakes, of pronunciation mistakes. Okay, so we have the first one here. Give me just 1 second. Yes, I needed the my arrow. So the first kind of mistake is the mistakes that cause a breakdown of communication, right? So something so important that doesn't allow us to carry on. We have to stop the communication, or someone just doesn't understand us, and that's it, right? And these mistakes are, for example, the first one here I've got is devoicing of the final consonants. We do it in Polish quite a lot. Po polsku mamy taką sytuację, że te głoski dźwięczne w wygłosie, prawda, na końcu wyrazów są ubezdźwięczniane. Czyli gdy mamy kod do domofonu oraz kot taki na 4 łapach z ogonem, to one w zdaniu te wyrazy będą brzmieć tak samo w bardzo wielu sytuacjach. Czyli jeśli zadam pytanie, jaki jest twój kot, to nie wiemy, czy chodzi o kod z d na końcu, czy o kota takiego w prążki, prawda? In English, the situation is different. We don't completely devoice those voiced consonants. they're partially devoiced, but they don't change into the voiceless counterpart, right? So cod and cot are two different words, and if we use the wrong one, people won't understand unless the context is crystal clear. Then obviously it will allow for communication, but otherwise the communication will just break down. The second one is the TH sounds, right? So a lot of people, instead of using the voiced the or the unvoiced th, they create a different sound. They use a different sound. They use a t or a d or a f or a v. You know, it depends on the situation, right? We're going to talk about it a bit more in a minute. And then the third situation is the word stress. Obviously, in Poland, we have fixed word stress, right? But in English, it doesn't work like that. It depends on the word. So we really have to learn which syllable is stressed in each of the words we're learning, right? We're going to talk about it in a minute in examples. The second category is the kind of mistake that leads to irritation or amusement of the other person, obviously. So we say something that is funny or perhaps is irritating, it's just annoying, it's grating on people, you know? So, for example, we've got these mistakes, right? So, for example, we have those words that are easily confused, beach and bitch, right? If we use the word bitch when we want to say beach, it's probably going to evoke some laughter, I'd say, at least, right? We're going to have some examples later on as well. The next one is the lack of weak forms. I'm going to talk about it because it's not an extremely serious situation, right? If we don't use weak forms of grammar words, but it might lead to irritation of the other person. If someone's listening to us and we consistently use strong forms of grammar words, it might be a bit irritating to listen to because the natural reaction is to focus on those grammar words that are stressed within a sentence. So it might be an issue, right? And then the third one is the articulation of the r sound. Obviously, as Polish speakers, we speak a language that is rhotic, right? Język polski jest językiem rotycznym, w związku z tym my wymawiamy głoskę r wszędzie tam, gdzie pojawia się ona w zapisie danego wyrazu. In English, at least in standard British English, we don't do it. It's a non-rhotic language, not non-rhotic accent. So we don't pronounce the r sound everywhere. We just pronounce it when it comes before a vowel sound, right? Czyli po angielsku w takim standardowym brytyjskim, w takiej standardowej brytyjskiej wymowie wymawiamy głoskę r oczywiście tylko wtedy, kiedy pojawia się przed samogłoską. It doesn't mean that we always have to do it because the r sound really depends on your identity a lot. So a lot of people do pronounce it, and it's absolutely fine. That's not a mistake at all. The mistake is when we pronounce the r sound in a way that could be irritating to the listeners. So if we go, you know, r, for example, or we do the French r, right? It could be a bit irritating to listen to for the other person, the person who's listening to us. And we need to remember that if we speak to, let's say, a native speaker of English, their job isn't to teach us English, right? So we have to prepare our students for the real world situations. Because obviously in a classroom, it's an artificial situation, right? It's an artificial setting. We are going to correct them. We are going to tell them what's wrong and, you know, tell them words or, you know, explain things to them. But in real world, people aren't going to do that. At least not everyone. Some people might. But the job of the other person, of the speaker, isn't to correct us, isn't to tell us how it's supposed to be. So the r sound might as well lead to miscommunication or irritation of the person we're talking to. You know, it happens. So we have to be mindful. And the next one, the last category is the kind of mistakes that may go unnoticed. So we do something, we make a mistake, but really it doesn't matter that much. For example, Intonation. Intonation is really hard to teach because intonation changes depending on what we want to say, because it conveys our emotions without changing the words, right? We can say one sentence with one type of intonation and it's going to mean something else if we change the intonation a little bit. Next, lack of contractions, right? If we consistently say, I do not, or I have not, or I don't know, I can't think of anything. He does not, right? So if we do it, it might go, unnoticed. People might think that it's just a sort of idiosyncratic thing. So it's a personal way of speaking. They probably won't care. It depends on the person, obviously, as well. So it's not a sort of a rule of thumb. And then the last one is no linking. So naturally, in connected speech, when we speak in English, we link words within phrases, within sentences, right? Within so-called speech units. If we don't do it, it's not a massive mistake. Yeah, it's not a huge deal, really. So if we talk like this, it's just going to mean that we're separating the words, we're not linking them, but it's not a big deal. It's not a big mistake. So now, which mistakes we should be correcting with our students, right? We need to pick our battles. We need to make sure that we're not constantly correcting their pronunciation, because it can be a little bit, disheartening or just difficult to deal with if they're being corrected all the time. So I believe that we should really focus on the first one, on the first category. So the mistakes that cause a breakdown of communication. But if we don't do it, it might be a big problem for our learners. And then the second one is good to correct as well, because if someone makes this kind of mistake, their self-confidence might go down if somebody laughs at them. I'm just very mindful of the time. Okay, no, we're good. Okay, so let's move on. Let's have a look at some examples of some mistakes that I've seen, I've heard from other people or from myself. I believe we've all made this kind of mistake when we're learning English. I love the smell of a fresh on my bed. It's happened to me before. I was talking about my bed, my bedroom, to a friend of mine, and I said, "Oh, I just love the smell of a fresh shit on my bed." And she went, "I beg your pardon? You love the smell of what?" And that was really, really embarrassing for me, So this was the category of an embarrassing mistake, right? And I felt like I couldn't really carry on with the conversation because I went red. I got really embarrassed. I thought, oh my God, that was a serious mistake, because she felt, the other person I was talking to, she felt a bit offended as well, that I used the word shit in front of her. I felt horrible, and it took me a while to recover from this one, So we have to be very careful about those. And I hear it all the time. The same with the word bitch and beach, yeah? I've heard someone say, "Oh, I'm looking for a nice bitch around here." It was at the seaside. And I thought, right, that's not me. But we have to be careful. We have to be mindful of those, and we have to be able to sort of recover and turn it into a joke, possibly, if possible at all, obviously. I can see Julia is writing here, fork, and I hope I can say this here. If not, please just beep it out or whatever. We can obviously confuse those two words very easily, right? Check it out in the comments. Yes, it was, Katarzyna says here, it was some time ago. I believe it was around 2008 when I came to London and I was studying in London, and those sounds were still a bit confusing to me. I still make mistakes. It's normal. We all do. So I'm not really bothered about mistakes anymore. But it can be a bit, sort of disheartening, and for some people even devastating if someone laughs at them, because it's a natural reaction. If someone comes to us, let's say Polish speakers, someone comes to us and they say, "Pochodzę ze Sralanki," right? It's an embarrassing mistake. We're going to probably laugh. We're going to say, "Skąd? Come again? Skąd pochodzisz?" it's going to be a funny mistake. Obviously, it's not a huge mistake because we're going to understand most likely that they meant Sri Lanka, but the mistake is a bit embarrassing, and it leads to laughter or embarrassment. So yes, let's have a look at the next one. I've got another example that actually happened as well when I was working in an office, and there was a colleague and he was wearing some nice perfume, right? And my other colleague, a female colleague, made a comment about it, and she said, "Your colon smells nice." So in here, we've got the word stress. Yeah, we've got cologne, which is, the kind of, jakaś woda kolońska czy perfumy, right? And then we have colon, which is okrężnica, right? In English. So if you say, "Oh, I love the smell of your colon on my pillow in the morning," right? That sounds really bad. And, it probably leads to a lot of laughter. So we do have to be careful about that. And this situation actually happened in real life. It was hilarious. I didn't get it at the time. I just, I listened to her and I thought, oh, okay, that wasn't the best word to use in this situation. And then I realized she actually said something completely else. And then the last example I've got here, right, is the pronunciation of the word can't, which we pronounce with a long R sound. Cannot, can't, right? The contraction is can't, can't. And then the word with a short sound, yeah? So this can be really, if the context is right, if we're saying, for example, I can't swim, and we say I can't swim, it's not going to be a huge difference because the context is going to be very, very clear, and there's going to be no misunderstanding. But if we say it what we have in here, the example we have in here, someone asks you, "Oh, can I help you?" And you say, "No, the word," right? It might be a completely different scenario. It might be a completely different situation. So we have to be, one more time, we have to be careful, because in this situation, perhaps it's going to lead to amusement and some laughter, but it actually might cause a breakdown of communication, depending who we actually speak with, right? And who we actually say it to. So we have to be careful about that. Okay. And yes, we've got about 12 minutes left. So let's talk about why do we make mistakes, first of all, right? So there are three main reasons I identified why we actually make mistakes. So first of all is about our muscles, because pronunciation is a very physical thing. It's about what's happening with the articulators. So what's happening with our mouth, our throat, vocal cords, the muscles in our face, right? It's a very physical thing. So when we grow up, right, when we acquire our first language, we learn how to use the articulators, how to use the muscles to produce the sounds in our first language phonetic system. And then if we want to change it, we want to learn a different phonetic system, it becomes quite difficult, right? So it becomes quite difficult to actually position the mouth correctly to be able to produce those sounds. So that's the first thing. It's a very physical thing. The second one is that English isn't phonetic, right? So the way we spell things doesn't really correspond to the way we pronounce things. For example, the or sound can be pronounced, can be spelt in many different ways. It's a very, very messy sound. There are loads of different spelling patterns for this one. So this is why it's so difficult, yeah? We can't just look at a word and think, right, it's going to be pronounced this way. If we have loads and loads of experience, which our students probably don't, we're going to know how to pronounce something, or we can guess. But most of the time, we actually have to check the pronunciation of an unknown word in order to pronounce it correctly. And it's tricky, right? In Polish, you look at a word, you've learned the spelling, you've learned the pronunciation, you're good to go, yeah? It's usually the number of letters corresponds to the number of sounds. Obviously, we do have digraphs as well, so RZ, CH, and so on. But once we learn those, we know how to pronounce something. Yeah, we just know how to pronounce it. But in English, you look at a word and it's like, what do I do with it? How do I even start? And we're going to have some examples later. And the last bit is that the sounds are different in Polish and in English. That's a no-brainer, really, right? But in Polish, we only have 8 vowel sounds, and in English, we have 20. So when we have words like cap, cup, and carp, to a Polish person, they all might sound the same as with the Polish a sound, as in the word lampa, right? So we need to distinguish those sounds, and sometimes it's just tricky. It's not easy to do. This is why a lot of people confuse sounds like I and E, right? Bitch and beach, because we don't really have this distinction in Polish. We have I and E, but it's a bit different, right? So yeah, so these are the three main reasons I wanted to mention to you today, okay, because I think they do have an impact on the pronunciation of our students and how they learn pronunciation and what they can do about it. So quickly, because we have 9 minutes left, let's talk the actual pronunciation mistakes Polish people make. And I want to talk to you about 5 of those, and we're going to look at some examples, and we're going to talk about how to help them eradicate them as well. So the first one is pronouncing all the letters in a word. Yeah. So a student looks at the word. Sorry, not this one. So a student looks at the word, right? And they go, okay, so I need to say particularly, right? Or regularly. Worcestershire, right? A lot of people do that. Obviously not advanced students, because they've learned a bit of pronunciation and they know a bit of rules, but a lot of people actually do that. So when we talk to students about pronunciation, it's very useful to introduce just a bit of the IPA. Yeah, I love IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. I think it's a game changer. You know, if you learn a bit of IPA and you can read it, your pronunciation is just going to go skyrocket, you know? Because let's have a look at the word particularly. Particularly, we don't pronounce all the letters, right? We don't even pronounce a R sound anywhere, even though it appears twice in the spelling, right? Particularly. And if we want to shorten it, a lot of people say particularly, particularly. So they skip a whole syllable. So it's good to do just some exercises with students, showing them those differences between the the spelling and the pronunciation. Same with the word regularly or regularly, right? A lot of people say regularly, so they skip a whole syllable. And probably the best example is the Worcestershire, right? We have Worcestershire, but we say Worcestershire, Worcestershire. So we skip a bunch of letters. We don't pronounce them as sounds, right? So that would be the mistake number 1. And the remedy for this would be to actually show your students some IPA transcription. I believe a lot of people do it already, but if you don't, perhaps do it a bit, you know, not a lot, but do it a bit, because we don't want to confuse people as well. Let's have a look at the second one. We've already talked about it, devoicing of final consonants. So when we have words like these, right, in English, we don't pronounce them the same. There are 2 differences between them, right? So we have the word cod with a short O sound, cod, and we have cot, cot with a short O sound as well. But the first one, dorsz, is pronounced with a D at the end, right? And the second one, kołyska, is pronounced with a T sound, which is completely voiceless. But there's another difference here as well, which helps students with listening comprehension. The vowel sound before the unvoiced consonant is going to be a tiny bit shorter. So when we have a look at the second pair here, we have bag and back. The A in back is going to be a bit shorter than the A in bag. Yeah, it's pre-fortis clipping called. So it's good to show students those differences. Perhaps use some minimal pairs like these here to tell them that actually it's bored, not bought. Yeah, bought is a different word and it might cause confusion. So use minimal pairs to actually contrast those words and help them understand what they mean. You can use them in context as well, use them in sentences as well. Same with live and life. The I diphthong is different in life. Sorry, not different, the same, just shorter. Life, live. Yeah? So that's what I said before. It helps with listening comprehension as well, because students will be able to understand that it's a different word. Someone wasn't talking about the beautiful back, they were talking about the beautiful bag. Yeah? So this is something we could think about as well. The third one is no vowel contrast. Yeah. So when we looked at the bitch and beach words, right, this can be very tricky for a lot of people. Let me just find the right. Yes, the right slide. Yes. So these are the vowels that are confused very often with Polish speakers. So we have the I sound and the E sound here, right? Then we have the E sound, E and We don't have this sound in Polish, This is why it's confused very often with the E sound. And the last group here, we've got A, and R, right? 3 different sounds that might sound exactly the same to a Polish person. If you ask a Polish student who's just starting to learn English to write down these 3 sounds, they'll probably just write the letter A, right? Because this is what they hear. Maybe they hear some differences, but they have no ways of telling them apart, right? So we have to be, we can be mindful about that as well. Right. So let's have a look. For example, words like rich and reach, or hit and heat, sit and seat. In the next one, the middle one, we have bed and bird. Yeah, bed, bird. West, west, worst. West, worst. And the last one, head with an head, heard. Yeah, we go down, the jaw goes down. So in this situation, it's really good to show students what's happening with your mouth, because it can be seen. You could just switch off the sound right now and look at my mouth, and you could see the difference. Head, heard, head, heard. Yeah. So it's, in this case, it's very useful to actually show them the physical stuff, yeah, and draw their attention to your mouth, what's happening when you're speaking. Let's go to the last one. And then we have words like hat with an open A sound, hat, hut, and heart. Once again, this can be seen. People can just look at your mouth and see that there are different shapes of your mouth, right? So we don't really have to explain too much. You can just tell them, look, just look at my mouth, yeah? And that's it. Or words like back, buck, bark, yeah? Stack, stuck, stark. So it's just a physical thing. It's really good to show them that. What do we have next? Let me just have a look. Number 4. Sorry, I got confused. Bear with me one second. Oh, yes, I wanted to show you a game that I actually do. You could do something like that. I know it's very colorful and it's a bit overwhelming, but it was because I wanted to draw my students' attention to this. So this is a game I designed because I attended a course about teaching English pronunciation as well, and it was really cool. So I started designing my own games for pronunciation learning. So we start here, right? And there's a teacher or another student, if we want to involve another person, who's saying one of the words in each group, yeah? So you can see groups here. Here's one group, here's another one, yeah? There's the next one, right? So we go from one group to the other, and we just say one word. So for example, I could go hat, stark, luck, cam, cap, right? And then we the other people in the group, they count the points. So they listen carefully and they try to understand which word was pronounced in each group, and they count their points. And at the end of the game, we say, okay, so how many points did we get? And the point is to have the same number of points, basically. Yeah. So it's a listening listening exercise, and it could be a pronunciation exercise for the leader. So we could do it a few times as well. And you could change it for, different vowels as well, different sounds. So that's just one example. We could teach pronunciation, and it doesn't have to be long. You don't have to spend 30 minutes on this, right? It could be just a quick warm up or a quick, game at the end of a lesson, for example. Let's go to the next one, okay? The TH sound, because it's actually 1:46, but I literally have two more things to say, so please bear with me. The TH sounds are very often confusing for Polish speakers, right? Simply because we don't have it in our Polish, in the Polish phonetic system. So we need to show them that these words, if mispronounced, mean something else. When we have both, it means something else than when we say boat, right? Two different words, death and death. Yeah, two different words as well. And if we tell them, if we show them these words in sentences, so in context, it might be better for them. It might be easier for them to understand that death and death could actually cause a breakdown in communication, if we switch them, if we don't pronounce the right one. And then the same 3 and free, because we need to remember that people don't listen to every single word we say. Nobody listens to everything we say. They listen for the main words, for the stressed words. So if we use the wrong sound, and then the word that we used it in is the main word in a sentence or in a thought group, it's going to cause confusion, right? Exactly, Paweł, za darmo. Yes, I could have added another one, because za darmo drzewo albo 3, so we could have free, tree, 3, right? So it could be 3 things. Good, thank you so much. And have a look at the last one, okay? So Polish people don't use weak forms very often, okay? So for example, when there's a sentence like this one, I just wanted to have a short sentence, the windows are clean. The word are in the sentence is pronounced just as a schwa, So the windows are clean. The windows are clean. The windows are clean, right? But a lot of Polish people would say the windows are clean, right? So they would stress this word, and that's not necessary, because normally, in normal speech, we use weak forms if we want to communicate with other people, because they use weak forms as well, right? So if we have a grammar word or a function word or a structure word, whatever we want to call it, we're not going to stress it. We're not going to emphasize it within the word, because it might change the meaning of the whole sentence, right? So let's have a look at this one. You should ask her about it, right? Should and her will be in weak forms, right? So it would be, you should ask her about it. You should ask her about it. And now if we stress the word her, it's going to be, you should ask her about it, right? Why are we stressing this word? There's a different meaning to this sentence if we stress it, right? So we have to be mindful of that, because someone else might misunderstand it completely. And let's have a look at the last example here. And this is the last bit, I promise. We have a very short conversation, right? So I just want to show you how the meaning changes if we stress a grammar word, So we have person A saying, let's meet around 8 p.m., okay? And person B says, no, I'm being particular here. Let's meet at 8 p.m. Normally, we'd say, let's meet at 8, right? At 8. Let's meet at 8. Not let's meet at 8. But a lot of Polish people don't use the weak forms, so they change the meaning of the sentence slightly. And it can be confusing for the other person. If they speak with a native speaker, they would expect a weak form here. They wouldn't expect at, they would expect it. For us, it isn't a big difference because we know what the word means. So we don't process this sentence on the same level as a native speaker would. So if we're learning whole sentences, we need to make sure that the weak forms are maintained and the weak forms are used. It's quite important for conversation and for communication generally. And definitely, it helps with intelligibility. So thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry, I overran a bit, but it is because I could talk about pronunciation, for hours and hours. And I'm really glad that you could be here with me today and listen to me. And if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, so we're going to have a short Q&A now. You can ask them in Polish or in English. It's up to you completely. So thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
Yes, there's a first question. Thank you, Lucy. That was great.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
think just for the, this is information for the participants. So what you saw today was an extended version of what Lucy does in her Instagram profile, where she's just giving you and maybe your students short tips on how to work on different words, different vowel sounds. So these are just great samples and great examples which you can take away and do with your students in your classes, because she's presenting context, she's presenting techniques, how to pronounce pairs or particular words correctly. Yeah, so I just encourage you to just go to Instagram and just check what's in there. Maybe you'll find something interesting. Okay, so now let's move on to the questions now.
Mm-hmm. Right. So Melania is asking about IPA, introducing IPA, and even if there are some transcription exercises in A1 course books, teachers often omit them. Yeah, that's true, actually, because the way our courses are structured most of the time is around grammar, right, or vocab, because we obviously have different ways of doing it, but they're very rarely including a lot of pronunciation, which really pains me. I would love there to be a bit more pronunciation included in workbooks or course books, but it doesn't happen very often. And obviously teachers are expected to teach pronunciation just like that. Yeah, just by the way, let's teach some pronunciation. We're talking about, I don't know, present perfect, but let's teach a bit of pronunciation in the meantime, right? It's never the focus. And teachers don't do that very often, not because they lack the knowledge of pronunciation or phonetics. It's because they don't know how to teach pronunciation effectively, because usually when correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time we have phonetics at university, right? So we learn about different sounds, different words, but we don't really learn a lot of techniques of how to teach it practically to students. Sorry, just coming back to your question, I would say we can introduce the IPA straight away, just with little bits, because the most important bit actually is the vowels when we're learning pronunciation at the very beginning. Yeah. So we can start introducing it when we talk about simple things. We can say cat, right? We can say cat, and there's an a sound in here. It's an open sound. This is the IPA symbol. We don't even have to say the IPA symbol for it. We can say this is the symbol for this sound. It's cat, it's open, cat, right? So we can start introducing it a little bit. I understand that not everyone knows the IPA very well, because it's just not, it's not, we don't have to know it very well, but it's good to check it in a dictionary and just perhaps put it on the board or put it in, whatever you're using with your computers and stuff. But I would say start introducing it straight away, because students are going to start writing things down. Obviously, they do the Polish way, right? So sometimes I see people making notes and going like pleasure, for example, in Polish, but we don't have the right letters to express English sounds. So it's good to give them the tools straight away. It doesn't have to be the whole table straight away. Yeah, it can be just little snippets, little characters. Oh, this is an interesting sound. We actually don't have it in Polish. So this is how we say it, and this is the character for it. I would do it just like one, character at a time. Don't do it too much because it's going to be confusing. I can talk and talk. I'm sorry.
There's another question, and I think a few more to come. So let's move on.
Yes. So we've got a question. When I go over some vocab from a list in a course book, I often cover the phrases in English and leave IPA and Polish phrases. Students love figuring out the phrases. This is a brilliant, brilliant tip. Yeah, this is what I use in my pronunciation course as well, where we can just ask students to read the IPA transcription and guess what word it is. Yes, that's a brilliant exercise. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Marta. Thank you. All right. That's an interesting one.
Isn't it true that the royal pronunciation forces you to have an accent? Well, that's an interesting question because it is a very much question around accents and pronunciation, right? So technically, it is called received pronunciation, if this is what we're talking about, unless you're talking about the higher heightened received pronunciation that the Queen used to speak, right? But we all have an accent, right? So the moment you open your mouth, you have an accent. So whichever pronunciation you choose, you still have an accent. So for example, my accent is sort of a mix of Polish and East London as well, because I lived there for 12 years, and a bit of received pronunciation as well. And this is what I teach because this is how I studied it and this is how I like speaking generally. So an accent is your identity and pronunciation is the physical act of producing sounds. So when you choose to speak, when you choose to pronounce things with RP, for example, then there's a possibility that you're going to have a particular accent as well. But I wouldn't worry too much about it because it's always going to be your own accent, your own identity shining through. Thank you for this question.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Do
the
we have
next
some?
one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think we have some more comments or questions.
Questions.
And we,
Pavel is asking why I chose to teach British, not American accent.
right.
It is because I'm British, because I'm naturalized, basically. I lived in the UK for a long time. I studied there. So it is my identity. I can't speak with an American accent. That's not who I am. And I studied British pronunciation as well. So that was a natural choice for me. It wasn't kind of, I didn't make a conscious decision about it. It was just the way it happened for me, and because of my life experience. That's it. Thank
Right.
you.
This is a comment, an interesting one from Pavel again.
Yes. So my favorite example of showing that IPA is important is when the former Pope said "chule" instead of "czule" when he was in Poland. That's a good one. I'm going to remember this one. Yeah, I'm going to use it. This is very, very interesting because yes, it can be very funny, amusing, or irritating because some people might be upset with it as well, right? So yeah, very good example. Thank you. English pronunciation is used, a great book to learn it from elementary level. Yes, and I've got it here. I've got it here. Yes, absolutely. It's a very, very good book. Yes, it starts with very basic sounds, and it shows vowels and contrast between those vowels as well. So yeah, absolutely. It's very good. English pronunciation in use is generally a good series of books for learning pronunciation and teaching pronunciation as well. Primary school students are often interested in those weird symbols. Yes, exactly. That's a good teaching opportunity as well. If they ask you, "Oh, teacher, what's that?" Right? That's your teaching opportunity, and you can tell them what it is. And also, I believe that knowing a bit of IPA, because I don't know whether all teachers actually know the IPA inside out. I don't believe they do because we don't really focus on that a lot. I don't know, but I think it's really good to show students differences between sounds. So definitely try to use a bit of IPA. And actually, I've got like a free lesson about the IPA, like 2 videos and a sort of table of those characters. So if you want to, just message me on Instagram and I can send it to you. Sorry, I'm plugging my stuff in.
Very good, because this is, I think, the right moment to mention that one of the prizes in our online quiz, which we're going to have at the end of today's event, somewhere around uh, 4:40, I think, is a workshop or consultation. I don't
Yeah,
know how I should call it. Lucy calls it consultation, but
yeah,
after knowing a little bit more about it, I think it's more of a workshop, one-to-one workshop with
yeah.
Lucy about English pronunciation. Can you say something more about it?
Yeah,
Just
thank you. I forgot about it. I was supposed to send you some information about it as well, and I'm really sorry.
that's all right.
Um, but it is, I call it a consultation. It is kind of a workshop because I work with quite a lot of teachers as well. With that, so before the meeting, you send me some recordings, and I make a transcript. I basically write everything down. I analyze it, and I sort of make a presentation as well around what you could improve with your pronunciation. And then we have some practical exercises during the consultation, the workshop, which lasts about 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how much stuff we have to go through, or how many questions you ask, things like that as well. But yes, so it's like an in-depth analysis of your pronunciation, and then we work together on improving it as well. If there are any mistakes, we eradicate those mistakes. If there are things that can level up your pronunciation, we work on those as well. So yeah, and I love doing them because they're always very interesting, with very interesting people as well.
Right, good. So this is the prize you can meet, or one of the 10 prizes that we've got for you in the online quiz at the end of the conference. Thank you, Lucy, very much. That was
Thank
really,
you.
really great. Lots of interesting information, lots of interesting tips. Uh, have a great day. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here with me today. I really
Thank you.
enjoyed myself. And yes, have a lovely day. Take care. And I'll hopefully see you at some point. Take
Yeah,
care.
thank you. Bye. Bye bye.
Bye.